Greetings, my magnificent ones. Sue Paulson here, your magnificence mentor. And we're back with another episode of Heaven on Earth. This past 10 days or so, I have been filled with self-doubt and frustration and this sense of not moving forward as much as I want, as fast as I want, in the direction that I want. Well, I don't like feeling that way. I want to be happy and I want life to just turn out exactly the way I want it to, right when I want it to. So you ever had those moments? Well, I had several days of them. Well, I was kind of stewing in my own juices. It didn't feel good, and I knew that if I allowed it to continue on too long, it was going to spiral down into something even worse. So I just started sharing what was on my mind, in my heart about all of this, the confusion, the frustration, all of that, with people that I'm close to who get me and they understand me and they had some potential solutions for me. Well, it always astounds me how the universe just conspires to help you out of some of these holes that we dig ourselves into. So I was digging pretty hard and I'm going down and down and down. Then there were several people over the course of the next week who weighed in with feedback, with just some empathetic listening, with ideas and opportunities to reframe what I was going through and to help me move forward, help me get out of this and on to something better. So one of the, and I'm extremely grateful for that support and that for help and for all that help. It surprised me a little bit how quickly it happened, that no sooner had I found myself feeling off than help was right there. And so I was patting myself on the back because I've been focusing on opening up to receiving more in my life, more of the things and the help that can support me. So I'm going, oh, okay, that's working. So this is good. So then it was, all right, how do I then, what do I need to do? Is there something that I could tangibly do that would support me in this journey that I was going through? So I've been reading the Way of the Heart from the Way of Mastery series. Chapter 2 was all about forgiveness. Well, it's not that I'm not familiar with what forgiveness is all about. I've read the Radical Forgiveness books. I've done lots of forgiving throughout my life and some self-forgiving as well. Obviously, it was time to revisit it because as I was reading, it struck a chord, and there was one phrase in there that talked about the poison of judgment. And I'd never looked at judgment like that before, as a poison. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, whoa, that just fits so well. It's a very insidious kind of poison. We take maybe just tiny, tiny sips of it when we're standing in judgment, whether it's judging someone else or judging ourselves. Now, my perspective, what I've come to understand is that all judgment stems from, the root of judgment stems from self-judgment, that we're hard on ourselves to start with, but because we don't want to necessarily own that or face that or acknowledge it, then it becomes a whole lot easier to project that weakness, that whatever it is that we're judging, onto someone else so that we don't have to deal with it because it comes out and puts on them, well, they're to blame. Well, I'd like to say that no, I'm above all of that. I would be wrong. And I'm not judging. I'm just saying that is not where I've hung out. First of all, I grew up learning from someone else what to think, how to act, what was the quotes right thing to do, so that you didn't shame the family or bring problems down on anyone else. So there was this protocol, this way of learning, way of being, way of doing, that was seeded in me from a very young age. So, and I think it was loosely called a conscience. You know, my mother always said, well, let your conscience be your guide. She made sure that there were all kinds of things in my conscience that would trigger if I was straying from the path in any way, shape, or form. And so it was a highly polished button that would get pushed, and I'm going, oh no, have I stepped over the mark here? What have I done? Now, don't get me wrong, there are certain ways of socializing that we learn and that we subsequently train our kids, because we don't live in isolation. And let's face it, if there was only us, we could be entirely selfish and do things just for our own needs and disregard anyone else's. So obviously, because we live in community and we live in a society where we want to make sure that everybody's needs get looked after. So for example, I'm not going to drive twice the speed limit down the road, even though I might want to, and it feels good to me, but there are other people to consider. So what if all of a sudden a child jumps out between two parked cars and I'm going too fast? Well, there's disaster right there. So some of these things that are put into place are important for us to live in a communal way. However, I think that when we look at what judgment and particular, so I'm not going to talk about judgment as such. I'm going to talk more about self-judgment. So where does it get us to be so critical of ourselves? Like, what is the benefit to that? Well, maybe sometimes it stops me from doing something that would hurt another, that would go against what's helpful in the long run, and so on. But other than that, when I think of how often I personally have beat myself up, criticized myself for some of the smallest things and particularly things that I didn't even know. So I made a mistake because I didn't know any better, and then I beat myself up for it. Well, that's harmful. That's harmful to my own well-being, and I suspect it's harmful to your well-being when we do that. But we do it because of training to a large extent, and this desire to attain some level of perfection, I guess, or to measure up, or to be good enough. I know that was my thing, is that, well, I have to measure up in some way. I didn't know who I needed to measure up to. And it proved to be a fruitless exercise over the years, because I never was going to be enough. I never could feel that I was enough. I never could feel that I was good enough. And so I'm going, well, maybe there's a different game here. And of course there is. It's the game of loving ourselves. It's the game of forgiving ourselves for our misperceptions, our mistakes, our missteps, our not knowing, our unconsciousness in doing something without realizing, all of those kinds of things, how we compare ourselves to other people, how we blame others for things that are going on that is not any more their fault than it is ours, how we get into this whole well, the world should be a better place and it's not, and we're finger pointing all the time, and it's the government, and it's big pharma, and we could go on and on with a mighty long list. Well, one of the things that it suggests in the way of the heart is that it would be better to recognize that all of that we think is outside of ourselves is really coming from inside ourselves. And if we could set aside our perception, because our perception of any situation may not be true. Lots of times I've questioned, I'll go to say, oh, well, it should be this way. And I'm then asking the question, is that true? So I learned from Byron Katie in her book, the title of which just escapes me at the moment, but she would say, well, ask yourself the question when you make a statement, well, is that true? Well, so often when I'd ask that question, is that true? I'd realize that it wasn't true at all. It was just an idea that I had that was a misperception. It wasn't, in no way was it true. Well, if it's not true, then why am I thinking that? If that's, that's the beginning of prejudice, right? We prejudge a condition without questioning it. We don't say, well, is that really true? And well, it might feel true to us, but when we explore a little further, we come to realize, actually, that's not true at all. I was mistaken in that. Well, of course, nobody likes to feel wrong. Nobody and we certainly don't like it to be pointed out by somebody else and say, no, you're absolutely wrong about that. I don't like that when somebody says that. So then I get all resentful and want to blame the other person for being so mean about that, and I'm judging them for their behavior and not really taking a look at my own. Well, do I need to judge myself for being wrong? Well, no, I don't, but I still judge myself. And so the poison goes into the veins and the tissues and to the point where no wonder we get depressed. No wonder we feel helpless. No wonder we feel hopeless, because there's no goodies there. There are no goodies for us. There's nothing to cling to that says, Sue, you're a magnificent being. And I love how you do this. I love how this happens. I really want to honor you for who you are. Well, that seems to be missing, because so much of my energy has been spent in looking for the flaws, looking for the bits that, oh, well, you have to polish that up. That got dirty. We got to look after that. And instead of just stopping for a moment and admiring what's really wonderful, what's really good, what's really there. So this process of self-forgiveness, I thought, maybe it's time I do some more of this. Oh, excuse me. Maybe it's time I get out my journal and just start writing down things that I could forgive myself for. Well, if you've been on the planet for any number of years, which I have, there's a lot in there. And so whatever came to mind, whether it was from way out of my past, whether it was a current moment by moment scenario, didn't matter where it came from. And it didn't matter what the topic was about. I just started writing, I forgive myself, and I would finish whatever the phrase was. Well, I've been doing this now for probably 4 or 5 days in a row. What I found even after the first day of doing this, I probably had 1.5 pages or more. I felt better. I felt lighter. The world didn't seem quite so gloomy. My perspective shifted to where things didn't look so dark anymore. And I'm going, oh, Well, now that's interesting. I wonder if it has anything to do with forgiving myself. Well, of course, the forgiveness means we're releasing that. It's like the poison is going up into the atmosphere, ready to be transformed. That's how I kind of envision it, that it's these little pockets of yucky nastiness that just come up to the surface and then out. I release them by forgiving it, by forgiving it, by forgiving it. And well, what happens is I feel lighter. I feel better because it's not weighing me down. That old gunk has just been diluted to the point where it's not there anymore. Oh, excuse me. So this must be important to talk about because it's catching me right in the throat here. So that's the idea or suggestion I have for you, my magnificent friends, this week, is to focus on self-forgiveness. What would it be like to forgive yourself? Because on the heels of self-forgiveness quickly comes compassion. Well, when you can have infinite compassion for yourself, guess what? It's a whole lot easier to have compassion for other people and where they're at. We are doing the best we can in any given moment, even when it feels as if we're failing miserably or we're not measuring up in any way. We're doing the best we can. When we learn more, when we grow more, then perhaps we do even better. But we are doing the best we can. So it's time to, I call them jewel-handled whips that we, self-flagellation here. Well, that's what judgment is. Self-judgment is self-flagellation, where we beat up on ourselves. Well, it's time to put those whips away, like give them away or throw them in the garbage or whatever that needs to happen. And instead, the self-hugs of forgiveness would be a far more beneficial thing to not only helping you tap into and tune into your own magnificence, but in creating your brand of heaven on earth. I mean, that's what's going to help. So I'm here today to spur you on to focus on self-forgiveness this week and see if you can't really release the poison of judgment from within, and then just see what happens. And I'd love to hear what happens when you test that out. That's it for today. I'm off to a Greek dinner party tonight, which I'm so excited about. I wish you a blessed day and a blessed rest of the weekend coming up. If you want more Heaven on Earth from the series, you can find me on my YouTube channel. You can always subscribe and new ones will pop up for you. You can also download my app, The Magnificence Mentor, which will give you a mobile opportunity to weigh in on the variety of videos and audios that I've done. So I encourage you to do that as well. Take good care, my magnificent ones. Until next time.